everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we are going to try speckling some yarn using some dry Tulip one-step tie-dye powder. And we are going to use these dyes to attempt to speckle both cotton and wool yarns. In these egg cups I have 3 colors of the Tulip one-step dye. Royal blue, which actually sort of breaks with a little bit of pink, teal, and yellow. I have pre-soaked 3 hanks and a total of 250 grams of yarn. We have some 100% cotton sugar and cream in white. We have some Simply Cotton Sport that is 100% organic cotton. And then we have some Knit Picks Wool of the Andes worsted weight yarn, which is 100% Peruvian Highland wool. I have protected my counter with some plastic wrap, and I've sort of started spreading out the fibers a bit. And these have all been pre-soaked in tap water, and I gently squeezed out some of the excess water. I will admit I am a tiny bit nervous about this. The dry tie-dye powder is a bit finer than Kool-Aid, for example, so I don't really want it to blow and get everywhere. But at least this one comes in a little Ziploc baggie, so I can kind of empty it into this container. And since I think there's still some in the baggie, but I'm going to try this. Whoa, cool. So at least with the yellow, I am seeing some speckling, but I'm also seeing that the color is spreading out a bit. I think it depends on how, I guess, concentrated it is in the spot. Now the important thing for me will be to keep my gloves dry. Because if I let the gloves get too wet, then I start to risk just having a total mess. I have no idea how much these colors will spread out versus sort of stay put. But so far, this is looking pretty fun. Okay. I probably should have opened them all to start off with, but this is looking pretty cool. I'm hoping that some of these areas where it's a bit more concentrated will end up with some like really nice dark patches, but let's see if we get some nice light. Maybe if I take a tiny bit less, get some little bit of light coverage down at the other end. Alright, I'm now going to rinse off my hand and then try to dry these gloves and open the other 2 packages. One of the reasons why I decided to try this is that I've observed with some of these tie-dye powders that if it's not well mixed in the container, you can get some darker spots on your yarn or your t-shirt. And so I wondered if it's something that we could take advantage. Oh, that got a really, really light, kind of cool coverage on the wool. I mean, I think all of these colors will spread once we wash them, but this is the royal blue. That looks cool. I doubt that like they're gonna stay that diffuse, or like that the speckles will stay that discreet. But I mean, we don't really know until we try. And so that was, you can see the difference between the light coverage of the blue and then the darker blue. And I will need to flip this at some point. But that's cool. I went for the blue before going back into the teal. Oh, this is fun. I have no idea how much these colors will stick around. So you can see I'm starting to go heavier on these colors. So we're getting more splotched areas versus some of the lighter. Oh, we can do some lighter technique as well. All right. That actually isn't so bad for a first. Oh, let's do a tiny bit more yellow over here. This is cool. Oh, I am digging this yarn so much. I don't think that the colors are really showing their full potential. I mean, I definitely will need to move this around, but I think that this is so fun. Okay, all the powder has not yet dissolved. So at this point, I am going to sort of let this sit for, I think, 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and check and try to move it. But what's really cool is with these blue sections, I see bright pink dots, and that's so exciting for me. You see those pink dots on the bleached cotton? They look so, so cool. The other yarns look great as well. It's just something about the stark white and these bright colors jumping out that looks really awesome. Unfortunately, I know when I go to wash it that white will pick up some other color, but I think that, you know, even if that takes a pastel tinge, I will be pretty happy. I'm not sure if it was quite 5 minutes or a little longer. I do know that there's definitely some spots of powder that have not sort of synced in. Fortunately, I forgot to set the timer right away. But I am going to flip these yarns so we can start looking at the other side. And the good news is that we actually got more color penetration than I expected, which is a very, very good thing. That means that we're not going to need to move this around multiple times, unless, of course, you want to. But I am always thrilled when I see that there has already been some color penetration onto the wrong side of the yarn. Wahoo! Yeah, and the wool is looking really nice as well. Sort of spread it out. Of course, now my fingers are damp, so I'm going to want to wipe them off before we start adding some more dye. Alright, I guess let's start with the yellow. This is so cool. I want to make sure I get the back end. I'm so glad that the color is coming through. I did some speckling with just Kool-Aid recently, and the results are beautiful, but it really only hit the topmost layer of the yarn, which is only problematic when you consider that in order to get some good depth of coverage, I had to move things around a lot. But this is fun, and these colors are so sharp. I'm really, really excited. I'm curious to see how much of the color will remain in our wool yarn versus these cottons. Do. Wow. Good color penetration through multiple strands of yarn means that we will get a more balanced looking yarn overall. Because if the colors only stuck, I guess, on the very top layer, then you could end up with some bigger, larger white sections, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just, okay, let's, But even so, we've got really good penetration there. And the goal is not to cover up 100% of the white. It's totally fine for there to be some white sections left behind. You just don't want like one long section of white, but oh funny, my fingers are doing a pretty good job as well. Let's add I think this looks pretty good. A tiny bit more yellow. I'm pretty happy with this. What do you think? I think now I'm going to go ahead and give this, I think, about 5 minutes to let these powders that I added sort of dissolve and sink into the yarn a bit. And then we are going to steam this to set the color. So again, to zoom in to look at some of these colors, but they look awesome. Absolutely awesome. On the 100% wool yarn, the colors spread out a bit more. I think that they aren't striking as quickly, which is consistent with what we see and what we know about these tie-dyes. They're really intended to dye the cotton yarns. So we see a little more spread of color, but this is still an absolutely stunning yarn so far. We'll see what happens after we steam it. I think I can fit all of these in here, but I'm seriously just picking this up, placing it in, and it might be a bit of a tight fit. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and first steam the wool, and then I'm gonna steam this for 30 minutes, and then I'll come back and I should be able to fit the 2 hanks of cotton in here. In general, I can fit 200 grams of yarn in this basket without much of a problem, but I didn't really want to try to push it. So I'll do the wool and then we'll do the cotton yarns. It is now time to take out the first yarn. And you can see that there's definitely some dye left behind. We have some pale patches, but it looks like the colors have spread out a lot, giving us a lot of blues and greens, which I think is pretty cool. So now I think I want to rinse this before we add the cotton yarns. Now I am going to carefully put these cotton yarns in my steamer basket and go ahead and steam these for 30 minutes as well. I do want to point out that some of the speckles in the last half hour have spread out a bit, but let's go steam our yarn. The 30 minutes are up, and let's see what we got. Oh wow! Those colors, remember how we had speckles before? We now have this splotchier, much splotchier color. The colors seem to have spread out a lot. I don't really see much evidence of the really discrete speckles anymore. But as we know, the Tulip tie-dye tends to spread a lot. but oh, I do see a couple little specks. Anyway, I'm gonna let this cool and then we will wash the yarns. Despite all the spreading, there's not a lot of color at the bottom of the steamer basket. Since I let them cool separately, let's start off washing our worsted weight yarn. I'm expecting to lose a lot of color, but I know that the steaming will help some of the colors remain. And ooh, this is cool. Maybe the speckling and sitting with the yarn will see some like nice darker patches that before it looked like we weren't going to get. Because as I'm rinsing this, you know, I'm seeing some more of the yellow and blue come out in the yarn. Oh, this is cool. Yeah, look, there's a really dark patch that looks like it's sticking around. Oh, I'm even more excited. Normally I don't love it when color washes away, but in this case I think it's making the yarn more spectacular. Unfortunately, dyeing yarns with tie-dye do require a lot of rinsing. I'm going to use some green, just some dish soap, to add a little bit of soap to the, at this point I could remove my gloves, I'm sure. Add some soap, but the water is getting a lot clearer. I'm going to go ahead and keep rinsing, rinse out the rest of the soap, and then I'll hang up the yarn to dry, and we'll start washing the cotton yarns. Let's start washing our cotton yarns. I was very pleasantly surprised with the reappearance of some of the mottled colors when I plopped the wool yarn into the water. So let's see what we get when we start rinsing out the excess dye from these cotton yarns. So we're immediately getting a lot of green runoff, which maybe I took too long. Maybe that green is going to stick around. But that's the problem. When you stop in one of these intermediate wash steps, there's still some fiber reactive dyes that can bind. But well, it looks like I have a little bit of white left. But an awful lot. Yeah, I would say that we're losing color, and ironically the yellows I don't think are being picked up well from the camera. But I am actually really happy with the way that these are turning out. I think that funny how you don't really see the yellows. I think that we are like we're getting some splotches. This is not a speckled yarn. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of speckling. It's certainly a unique and lovely yarn. But those amazing speckles that we had before steaming are gone. Now, I don't know if it would have made a difference if we had wrapped this up in some plastic wrap before the steaming or not. I don't know if that would have helped preserve the speckles because we would have introduced less water into the system, or if, you know, they were destined to spread out all along. But either way, I am going to keep washing this until the water runs clear. Then I will hang up the yarn to dry, and we'll come back and look at our finished amazing yarns. This might not be what we set out for, but I love the result. Here are the finished dried yarns, and I'm in love. These might not be the speckled yarns that I set out to create, but I love the way that these looks like a watercolor painting. On top we have the 50-gram organic cotton hank. Next is the white, the bleached cotton. And then on bottom is the 100% wool. I'm not sure my camera can really do justice to the brightness of these skeins, but it almost makes me think of bioluminescent algae glowing in the ocean. I find it interesting that overall the wool yarn is a lot more yellow than the two cotton yarns. I think that they all sort of absorbed color differently, and when I was washing them, they each had a slightly different bleeding because of the way that the colors absorbed to the fibers, but I still think it's just a lot of fun. Throughout all the yarns, there are absolutely patches that have some speckles that we can find. It's just, you know, at the beginning when we had the powder land on the yarn and we saw these really, really sharp speckles, I got so excited. And it's amazing how much the color spreads out from just that tiny, tiny speck. I don't know if it would make a difference if we wrapped the yarn in plastic wrap before steaming it, or if we made the effort to remove as much water as humanly possible from the yarn before dyeing. Maybe if there was a little less water in the fibers, the colors wouldn't have spread out as far. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I hope that you enjoyed this attempt to create speckled yarns with dry tulip tie-dye powder. These yarns aren't necessarily the speckled yarn that we saw at the very beginning. The colors spread out a lot. However, while you might not call these speckled, they do feel very impressionistic and watercolor. There are short sections of color and they sort of glide from one shade to another because of the way the colors spread. And this is just absolutely breathtaking. I really look forward to playing with this technique more in the future. After doing this project, I sort of feel, why should I bother dissolving this dye ever? If it's going to spread this beautifully, I want to speckle everything with the tie-dye. One note of caution, it's probably best to wear some kind of dust mask when dealing with these powders. They are a lot finer than Kool-Aid, and you never want to inhale any particles. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel. If you want notifications for when I start a new live stream, make sure that in addition to subscribing, you turn on the notifications. That way, when I do one of my frequent dyeing or unboxing streams, you'll know exactly when it's happening. Thank you so much for watching.